All right. So I see we've got over 20 people here. People are still joining. I'm going to be following in the chat. The first thing I want to do is tell you a little bit about who I am. First of all, that was the best intro I've ever had, Stephanie. Thank you so much for that. I was like, oh, wow, I feel kind of special. But overall, why should you listen to me? Like Stephanie said, I've been doing this for a really long time. I've worked with startups around the world. So no matter where you are or what industry you're in, this is going to be really relevant to you. So I'm really interested to learn about where you're at, but I have a book coming out. I've worked with a lot of startups that have sold for up to $400 million. And I think I might know a little bit after 15 years. So I've also been teaching this for a really long time, but I want to know who you are. So if you're someone who's really comfortable and confident, go in the chat, tell me about your business. I'm going to see the chat and I'm going to curate this conversation to your business if you tell me about it. If you're not comfortable to type it out, no problem. Wait until I'm going to pretty much go through this pretty quickly, but type your questions as you get to them. I will answer them all at the end, or we'll do like a little video thing if Stephanie will allow, and you can talk a little bit about your business and how you would, if you have specific questions for how we would do PR for your business. I'm really interested in curating this. Normally, this would be the point where I would tell someone to stand up and talk about their business and tell me who you are, but type it out and I will go through it. So we're going to get right into it. Before I start talking about PR itself, I'm a growth hacker. And just like Stephanie mentioned, I've been literally traveling the world working remotely with startups, teaching them not only about PR, how to do their own SEO, how to do influencer marketing, how to do app store optimization, all those things, but also how to think like a growth hacker. I know the term is way overused, but the bottom line is if you think really aggressively and you're very confident in your product and your service, then you should be confident to do a lot of these marketing tactics that I'm about to tell you. So there's some things I want to go through so you can mentally be where I'm at before we start talking about the tactics that you have to employ. One is growth happens by creating the right value for the right target. And if you don't wait to find that, that's just like product market fit for your product. It's the same thing for your marketing. You have to be able to iterate. You have to be able to optimize. You have to be able to track it, which we're going to talk about. But once you're really confident that you have enough value in your message, there's really no such thing as a stupid idea. Growth hacking is all about testing everything and being data-driven, not being like some clients I've had in the past with my agency where like, oh, that won't work for us, Andrew. I know you know a lot about startups and marketing, but you don't know this industry. Have you tried it? Do you have data that shows it doesn't work, or is that a hunch from the founder? So be open-minded to a lot of these things that I'm going to teach you today, and just know that nothing is a bad idea unless you test it and it proves that it doesn't work. That doesn't mean that you need to spend months and thousands of dollars putting together a test. You can do a quick, efficient test to see if there's reason and data to keep exploring that channel. There's also no such thing as spam if it's targeted. Let that sink in a little bit. I, as an aggressive marketer, am often sending out unsolicited messages to people, but legally, if you're in Europe, nothing that isn't GDPR compliant, I promise, swear to God. But basically, if there is enough targeting and your message has enough value, then it will not be spam. And let me give you an example. Like if you're in love with a particular restaurant that's near your home and they send you a text message without you asking about 50% off at their restaurant, you're going to be like, I didn't even sign up for, oh, well, I'm going to use this, right? So think about that in your message. Everything I'm going to talk about today is all about creating value. That is the secret hack to marketing, to dating, to life in general. When I first moved to San Francisco after Dubai and several years in Dubai startup scene, a billionaire VC met with me for no reason, I thought, and I'm sitting across this huge table with this guy and he's eating lunch and giving me advice. And I'm like, why am I here right now? Can you tell me? You're helping me out. I understand you're giving me advice. He's like, that's all it is. I just wanted to give you some advice when you moved here after whatever. And he was like, that's what San Francisco and the startup scene is all about. Really, just the people that win the most are not out trying to make more money. You'll realize a lot of billion-dollar companies nowadays really started as personal projects and just trying to solve their own problems. And that's how you really need to think about things like, how can I inject more value into my message? How can I create more value for this reporter? How can I create more value for this podcast host? When you think like that, that's when you win. Okay. The next thing is I made up this term ROTI, I think, but basically all of the stuff we're going to talk about today doesn't cost you anything. I am in love with $0 growth hacks. My book that's coming out, the Startup Growth Book, was originally called $0 Growth. The publisher didn't like that title, but the idea remains the same. Everything that we're going to talk about doesn't cost money. And if you're an early stage startup, you kind of just spend your time quite frivolously. And what I've realized over the last decade is that we all have one thing in common with billionaires that have tons of money to spend on marketing or whatever. We still have the same amount of time. Yes, you can augment your team to create more time of resources. But if you are the chief everything officer of your company and you're listening to this, or you're a marketer that has a million other things to do, you need to be able to track your time investment so that you can then reinvest your time on the things that are working. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, but all of the things that we're going to go over today for PR are all about, investing some time, figuring out what works, and then investing more time on there. So what I want you to think about after this lesson is, how am I spending my time budget? You have only so many hours in a day to invest in marketing for this project that you're on, or for PR if you're a marketer and you're doing a bunch of other things. So your time budget is really important to analyze, which brings me to my next point. Obviously, tracking and analytics is vital to any success in marketing. If you are listening to this call or webinar and you don't know exactly what your KPIs are and where you stand today, then what I'm going to suggest is you put, wherever you're working, you put a screen, if it's an office or a co-working space, or even just a whiteboard that you write the KPIs of the week on there and where you're at. Live by those metrics. From PR standpoint, it's how many press releases press releases did we send out? How many conversations did we get? How many people did we add to the press list? I'm going to go over all those things, but for every marketing campaign, you need to be able to track the success and be able to track channels against each other, right? If you spend 5 hours in a week on PR and 5 hours on social media, and you got nothing out of the social media, then those 5 hours you can then, and PR did really well, you can reattribute that. So make sure your tracking is really in place, and we can go over that in the questions phase if you need a deeper insight into what I mean for tracking. But for the sake of time, public relations is really these 4 things. And I'm usually in the in-person meetings, I stop and I go, is anyone here ever a reporter or writer in their previous life? And there's always a person. I may or may not say a derogatory comment about reporters on this call later, but basically it's these 4 things. It's all about crafting a valuable story. And I'm going to help you with all these 4 things. Obviously, building a PR database, distributing that PR to that database in a strategic and efficient and effective way, and then learning how to speak to the media. And overall, that again lies that value. And so that's what we're going to talk about obviously first. But the 4 actual things that you're going to learn today: how to write a press release for your business, and then literally how to even make a story out of what you've got now, we'll talk about, but how to create a media list or a PR list without having to spend any money, how to distribute your press release the right way or without tons of time investment, and then how to speak to the media without having to pay an agency like mine to give you executive media training. So first thing, writing a press release. And before I even go into it, it's about figuring out what is valuable that you're working on now. Every single time that I land with an early stage startup, they are in one of 2 places. They've raised a ton of money and they're like, we know we have a story. It's the raise, go with that. Or they are really like, we haven't raised a ton of money. We haven't helped a million people, Andrew. We don't have a story. And I don't know if Stephanie will allow me to cuss on this, so I'll stop, but I naturally would say something else, but I say bull crap. Like everybody who is solving a problem and helping people with your project, there's a story there. It's all about figuring out what you can leverage from your story, what is valuable in your story to what's going on in the world right now. For instance, how is your startup helping people post-COVID? How is your startup helping people with the explosion of remote work? How is your startup related to the explosion of entrepreneurialism in the world right now? How is your story related to the recent influx in investing around the world? Things that are going on macroeconomically, how do you tie into that? Who on your founding team is an expert that could be a source for things? It doesn't always just have to be about your startup. But even if none of those things make any sense to you, The launch of your startup is a news story. The launch, or if you're a big data company and you've categorized 1 billion sentiments, you've got some kind of number in there. You've invented a new technology, you've got a new solution to an age-old problem. Something there is the story, right? So thinking about that, here's a couple example real titles and subtitles of actual press releases that my company and I have, as a consultant, have put out and that have landed massive amounts of PR. For instance, the first one there that got a client in Forbes and TechCrunch, many other things, and eventually the company exited actually very recently for 8 figures. Yeah. And so the first thing I want you to do is start a Google Doc. You're going to hear me talk about free Google Docs, Google Sheet stuff a lot today. I'm all about saving companies money, but if you use a Notion or whatever else, it's all you. You do whatever you want. A lot of people use Trello for brainstorming, whatever it is, your tool is your ClickUp, all you. I like Google Docs for the collaborative nature, and obviously then you can expand on it. But what I want you to do is just start brainstorming some titles. I think Stephanie's going to send out this video. So that's step 1 for you. What are some potential titles for what we're working on? Company launches, it's your title a little bit vague, and then your subtitle, I'm going to talk about things to include in them, but just come up with 5 to 10 potential titles, circulate them around your team, friends, and family. Do you think this would be interesting? I'm going to go in deeper on how to write a press release, but this is really step 1. Start with the brainstorm session. What is really valuable that we're working on? Why is this a really interesting story? And if you're listening to this like, oh, our project's not interesting at all, then maybe it's not the right project. You should care about solving a big problem. Your startup, your business should be related to something larger than just making you money. If it's only about making you money, it's going to be hard to really be stuck on that project and work on it for several years. You have to be passionate. You have to be the biggest evangelist of your company in the world. If you're the marketer or the founder, if you're not passionate and you're not really thinking bigger picture, how big this company is and how many people we're going to help, then maybe it's not a really great project, to be honest. So no matter how small it is, oh, we're just a restaurant POS technology. Well, restaurants were hit super hard by COVID. Really hard. And if your solution is cheaper and more effective and going to help those small businesses in America that are the backbone of the country, there's a story, right? So think of those titles. Some things to go over from titles, you want to keep it short. I really like to just try and get this title and the subtitle on one line. Like I said, kind of keep it a little bit vague so the reporter or writer will actually keep reading, right? You want keywords in there to what that person is going to be interested in writing about. We're going to talk later about building a press list, but overall, you might make 1 or 2 different versions of the press release so it's super targeted to that reporter or writer. For instance, if your business is, in the travel industry, but then it's also a big data company, then you're going to have 2 different potential PR tracks there. So you might want to make one press release more about the big data implications of your company and the other about how it impacts the travel industry and more travel related keywords. So you can use that press release individually. So use not necessarily buzzwords that are going to annoy anybody, but a reporter is going to be looking for things that that are going to tick the box of what their boss told them they need to write about this week or this month. Think about that also. We're trying to create value for this person that just has a job to do. Right? So if we can help them do their job better, they're going to want to use our story. And so that's what we want to do. We're going to talk about outreach later, but we want to reach out to people who are clearly writing about stories related to our business so that we can be valuable for their audience, right? Numbers, like I said, really big and important. It could be the money that you've raised. It could be the potential size of the industry that you're going into. Those are the things you want in a title and subtitle. The title, subtitle, just like on a website or on a blog, that's what's really going to grab their attention, but you're going to reach out to them also, and you're going to get to explain more. So after you land on a title, subtitle that you really like, and by the way, if you've got questions, I know I go fast, just write them down in the chat. I see there's like 10 or so already in there. Great. Keep them coming. I'm going to go as fast as I can so we can make sure we have a lot of time to actually dive into customizing this to your questions and stuff. But overall, this is an example. I'm going to actually show a real example too, a very recent one actually. But overall, you want these what, 6 or 7 things in a press release. Before I go into those 6 or 7 things, the number one problem that new interns at my company have, or students in my online courses have, or people who read the book already, is that they start to write it like a blog or an article. This is not a place for embellishment, although you do want to be your own marketer, and you need to be honest though. But it doesn't need to read like an article. It needs to be 100% factual, just fact-based, and with a certain amount of contents that are going to give them everything that they need to be able to write something without interviewing you. Think about that. I'll say it again. The goal of this press release is to give that reporter everything that they need to not need to speak to you, because unbelievably, that is the most common thing that's going to happen. There's like 3 potential outcomes besides the fact that they do nothing, because hopefully that doesn't happen. Now, the first one is they're working on, you hit them right at the right time. Oh my God, Andrew, we're working on something about the explosion of remote work. I think this person would be a great source. We'd love to set up an interview for an already existing article. Cool. Hopefully we give them great value in the interview, and they include a link for us to our website or our business. That's cool. That's fine. This helps put the leader of the company through as a thought leader in the space, bring some awareness to the business, but also significant amount of traffic. And then the next PR efforts you do get easier and easier as you get included into really big publications. The second thing that they're going to do, and what I think is really the most common, is they just take what you wrote, regurgitate it onto an article, maybe even literally paste the press release, depending on if it's like a blog or a medium, up to a medium-sized outlet. They might just repost or turn an article out of what you gave them without even contacting you. And that's great. And obviously the third thing, and what we're going to work on, how do we distribute to the biggest publications, might want to literally create a whole piece all on your story. Now, if you're just a brand new startup that hasn't raised money and doesn't really have news, that's unlikely. But if you are really related to what's going on in the world, or your founder has a really interesting story, whatever it is, you'd be surprised. We normally get, even for startups that haven't raised money, at least one really big nationwide thing. And it's all about really critiquing the story to be really valuable. That's obviously the ideal situation. That any nationwide placement, if you're a mobile app, can get you 10 to 50,000 installs. If you're a website, even more traffic than that, because it's just click through and they go through to your website. So real amazing, huge value for an early stage startup. If you compare that to paying per click, for a mobile app, you're looking at $3 to $10 an install. So do the math. And for a website, 50 cents to $1 a click for traffic, even though it's not the highest quality traffic. But I'm going off topic, but just so you know, PR traffic is some of the highest quality, depending on if you get that standalone article or if you just get mentioned in something else. But you'll see that traffic consistently being quite high and converting high, because if it's an article all about your business, they're already ready to convert by the time they click on something. They're reading a whole article. It tells them so much more information than an advertisement or a social media post. That's why PR is so powerful. Okay, so the things we want to include, just think, it's almost common sense, right? They need quotes. They need your media kit. They need your contact info, any other media that you can give them. Quotes not only from the founding team, customers, users, any quotes from, investors, anything that will give them more validity to this is definitely the story we want to talk about. Numbers, any macroeconomic numbers about the total market size or what the projections are. That's really all it is. So obviously you want to date and where your company is coming from. That stuff's common sense. You've already picked an amazing title. This is not rocket science, you guys. This is, you can honestly go on Fiverr and find an expert for $100 to write a pretty decent press release. This part is not worth stress. I think anybody can really do it. If you're the person that's writing any kind of blog content or website copy for your business, then you should definitely be able to do this. But it is an iterative process. You're going to reach out to the press. You might not get responses in the beginning. I think we should probably change the press release. You're going to want it to be like a page or two. If you go longer than that, I think it is like a TLDR, their eyes glaze over situation. And so keep it succinct, keep it valuable, and then read through it again when you're done. Like, is this all facts, or am I just saying we're going to be the best startup of all time? Not value. Every single thing that you do as the marketer for your company, think about the value for the reader, the value for the audience. The same thing with the press release. Look through it with the lens of, is this going to be valuable for what they normally talk about or write about? Maybe I should delete that. Cool. Ask any question. This is an example of a press release that an intern of mine finalized this week for my new upcoming book. And you see how this is what it should look like in the end. Obviously, there's a whole nother page I can't show you that has pictures of the book and whatever, but I know I call myself a startup marketing expert, but a lot of other people do too, right? So startup marketing expert publishes new growth hacking book. Short, succinct. It's got the startup, it's got marketing, it's got growth hacking in it. So if the person my team is reaching out to is covering any of those subjects, chances are they're going to want to read that press release. Then, like I mentioned in the subtitle, it goes straight into actually talking about the brand name, the Startup Growth Book, because even if they don't read it, they're still seeing that brand name, right? And one more little keyword thrown in there was Silicon Valley, right? And so then it just facts. I got the link in there. It is actually the #1 new marketing release on Amazon. That's not necessarily a call to action, but it's a social proof. It's a validation. That's what you want in that first paragraph. And then, below this is where I get into the quotes. So there's a quote from me, there's quotes from early readers of the book, things like that. So think about what's going to be valuable, get that title brainstorm started, and then you're ready to move on to the next part. Actually, to be honest, this is something that you can start today. You might not be ready to write the press release right now. If you're pre-launch and you're listening to this, you probably want to start working on your press release about 30 days before launch. If you're doing a launch, you definitely want to make a press release about your launch, period, right? If you're post-launch, and you got a new campaign, new feature, new partnership, something like that, or you're going to hit the 1 million mark, whatever funding, 30 days out, work on the press release. But the press list, you can start working on today, and you might not use it for a year. And I'm going to explain to you why. A press list, by the way, is just a Google sheet of all the contacts that we could possibly reach out to. And we're not going to get into content marketing or influencer marketing or any of these other things that I teach about today, but the same thing applies to almost every other form of marketing. Influencer marketing, it's about building a list of all these influencers that we can potentially engage with. Content marketing, a list of all the places where we can distribute our content. Much the same here. We're going to start I'm going to show you to passively over time build a sheet of all the people who you think might be potentially interested in talking about your business, so that when you do have a news event, you do have a finalized press release, you already have a list ready to distribute. Boom, for free. I'm going to show you how to build it, but that's really one of the main things that expensive PR agencies charge for, the Rolodex of contacts that they've got to get you in the door with USA Today, Inc. Magazine, TechCrunch, etc. My company, Growth Experts, has been building our personal contact list of reporters for a decade almost. So that's what people really pay for, but you can do it yourself. You can build it. You're just starting at square zero. So that's why. So this is what it's going to look like, but we're going to go back over that. Here's the secret. Google Alerts. If you're listening to this and you've been living under a rock for the last decade and you don't know what Google Alerts are, pause everything. No, don't. You can't pause this, but this is going to change your life in general. Set up a Google Alerts. Forget about PR for a second. Set up Google Alerts for your name, your business name, your website domain, and you will get an alert, an email alert every time a piece of content on the internet is created related to that stuff. Same thing can go for the keywords that you think would be related to your story. This was just a screenshot from when I was living in Thailand, but I wanted to know any events, anything anyone was talking about startups in Thailand. And basically every day, Google will send you a list of all the new blogs, articles, press releases, events coming up, new websites, everything related to those keywords. So if your business is related to, events reopening in COVID, you want to hear about any reporter writing about those stories. And what you're going to do is basically over time, click on that article and get the contact information of that person and add it to the list. This is a 10 minutes a day exercise for you that will slowly but surely build you up a press release. We're going to show you how. Let's just assume I clicked on an article I liked. Almost, I would say 90% of the time, this is, not this most accurate data, but a wide majority of the time, the email of the reporter is there. The name is usually clickable across every article. So every day I'm finding, 5 to 10 relevant articles, maybe reading them, maybe sharing them on social media if I think that my target audience would be interested in them. But no matter what, I'm grabbing the reporter who wrote about that interesting article that might be interested in what I have to tell them eventually. And I'm getting their email address, and then I'm dropping them into, I don't know why I did that animation. I'm dropping them into that list. If they don't have their email, this is literally today or yesterday, I was showing a new intern how to do this. And I literally did the example live for him. And the very next day or this morning at 4 a.m., who knows where Anna is, this person responded. So if they don't have their email address right there, which some TechCrunch reporters, some New York Times, some other people don't have their email anymore, you go to Twitter. If you're not a Twitter user and you're listening to this, create an account with your name. You need to use it for business. It's amazing because, well, for many personal things too, but for business alone, you can reach everyone via Twitter. And the reason that is because everyone is addicted to this right now. And you can still use that to your advantage before we all get a lot smarter about notifications and we shut them off. Twitter sends you an email, a notification on desktop, and a push notification on the phone that you've gotten a message from someone. So it's going to get through to them, right? And we're all just addicted to the little red flag dot, right? So usually they'll have their Twitter there. If not, which Anna didn't on the one that I was showing to my intern, I literally searched her name with the word Twitter, found her on Twitter, sent this message. Again, very valuable message. Her job is all about finding good stories, right? I'm not like, hey, I'd really love for you to write about my business. What should I do, right? Hey, I have a story for you, DM, question mark. Short, succinct, pure value. She was like, oh my God, yeah, sure. So then today, my intern followed up with all the information about my book. She writes about startups and marketing and stuff. And so slowly over time, you can build this press list. I'm talking, months down the line. If you need to expedite it, you can obviously put more than 10 minutes a day and you can do this pretty easily. But over time, you're building that press list, okay? So going back to this, you don't need anything more than first name, email address. But if you include the publication and a note about when you contacted them, or maybe even a link to something similar that they wrote on, this list can be reused and recycled for your business in many, many ways. Like, I can't tell you enough how valuable this will become for you. Over time, let's say, ideally you want to have at least like 500 or so emails when you get to like actually ready to send out a press release. And I'll talk about why, but let's say you have 500 reporters that write about your industry, what your target demographic is interested in. Then it's really easy to reuse that for partnerships, to promote events that you're doing, new features, whatever. Partners specifically, you can use it to leverage, a discount with something that you need, or, a barter or an event that you really like to come and speak at. Well, if you put me as a speaker at your event, I have a list of 500 reporters. We'll push out that we're speaking at that event and it'll promote your event. Okay, yeah, we'll put you on as a speaker, right? So you can really leverage this list a lot. I can't get over how amazing value this list will become for you. But that is really the biggest thing. So let's say you start making the list. Then once you have a story, you start working on a press release, you finish the press release. Now we're coming to the point where it's like PR launch day. Now we've got this list of 500. We've got a press release that the team and everybody who's a decision maker approves. Now what do? You want to segment that list that you've created into 2 parts. You don't need to do it from the beginning. It's very much literally just highlighting the fields of the largest opportunities, really the top 10%, meaning like the holy grail. If we get any of these top 10%, we're going to blow up. And so, because we want to message them differently, we want to offer them different value, and we want to start there. We don't want, I don't want to name any small blogs that might be, if this gets circulated, but we don't want a particular, like a small blog to get the exclusive story. I guess right now would be the good time to talk about that value. We don't want to give the exclusive to someone unless it's a huge value for us, right? So what are the value? So you start by individually reaching out to the biggest publications. I know, super time sensitive, but that's what it is. This is a blood, sweat, and tears marketing channel if you want to do it yourself. Otherwise, you pay someone like my company and my team to do it for you. But You've segmented the top 10% of that list. And then you're going to send them messages. We're going to use automation later on. If you're thinking about, oh, we can do this with automation, you totally can. But for these big top 10% opportunities, I want you to practice reaching out organically, because your organic outreach via email is very valuable to learn what part of your message is most interesting, what size of the message, what keywords, what call to action is really working for you. Then you take that and you put it into the automation. But if you just start with templates and reaching out to a bunch of people in bulk, you get a much lower response rate. So I want you to start with an organic message to those top 10%, maybe just sending out 5, 10 a day in the beginning to the absolute biggest ones. If TechCrunch is your dream scenario, or one of the other big brands that I mentioned, Forbes or whatever, that's going to get you global exposure, and you want to start there, because if more than one of them say yes, which has happened to me in the past with a client, we had USA Today and NBC that were pitted against each other, and we lost both because of bad strategic playing. I mean, it wasn't really all our fault. The client really wanted one particular one, so we held out too long for that one. And then, so that was an issue of blasting a little bit too much at once, right? So what I want you to do is become a cold email expert right now with Andrew Startups, okay? When you look at any of my cold email messages, there's only 3 things in the message. And the reason that is the more you say, the less likely they are to read it. 70 to 90% of people open emails first on their phone now, depending on where you at and who they are and what demographic. But if they're opening it on their phone and they have to scroll to read your whole message, eyes glaze over, TLDR, they didn't read it. So that's one thing. The second thing is it's very important that they understand the value that you have for them. So that's what you want the bulk of your outreach message to be. What that means is 3 things, like I said: who you are, what value you have for them, and what you need them to do. And that middle part is actually 60% of it, 20, 60, 20, okay? So if you look at this, hey, I didn't even talk about myself. I talked about the project, right? This is what we've done. Here's the value I have for you, because the interview I could arrange for you, even though there's a typo, don't blame me for that, still got it. This company got the article. So basically, and then here's the call to action. Here's the press release for you to look over, right? So very short, very succinct, even shorter if I'm messaging on social media. Like I said, with cold messages, just like the press release, vagueness draws a response. So if you try hyperlinking versus not hyperlinking, including the press release versus asking, should I send you the press release? So many different things. A calendar link to book a call with you or whoever the expert is versus can I send over the calendar link, right? All of these different tests are what you're going to put into the automation after you've reached out to these top 10. So let's say you go through about a week to 10 days of emailing the top 10 opportunities. I promise you, you will get some. As long as the value is there in your message and it's properly aligned, you will get some people that are like, wow, oh yes, we'd really be interested. So start with those big opportunities. A lot of times, really top tier outlets, they need 30 days to publish a story because they've got a backlog or they're not ready to publish it right away. So you're going to hold off on blasting it out to all the rest of those people until you get 2 to 3 of those articles. Now, going back to what kind of value can you offer these really big opportunities, there's 2 or 3 things, I think. One is an embargo on the story. An embargo means, just like I said, if they need a month to tell the story, cool. We won't reach out to anyone else for the whole month. It's your baby, it's your story. When you publish it, after that, the embargo will be released. Technically, that's really the exclusive, right? You're giving them the exclusive. They get to interview you or the founder or whoever the face of the company is before anybody else. And then the other, no, that's it. Those are the main 2 things, right? Oh, and in an interview, you're offering them an interview with this person who's hard to reach, right? You might also need to make a 1-pager for the founder of your company that includes other interviews, media images, things like that. So we're not going to go super deep into that. It's pretty obvious how to make a 1-pager. It's just bio, links, whatever. But you might need to send that across also to get them that interview. They want to see previous interviews. If you haven't done any previous interviews, go out and start with small podcasts first, then use those to go to the bigger media. So that is the start of the outreach. This looks really ugly, but what is an example of is go on MailChimp, go on Constant Contact, Active Campaign, whatever you want, put the rest of those emails in, I'm going to show you the tool that I really recommend for this. But basically with all those little ones, all right, we've gotten our big top tier publications. We're super happy. We got a ton of traffic and business and investors are interested. Everything's amazing, but we want to get all those small blogs and build links and get traffic and get known in those other communities, send signals to Google that we're a reputable company because of all these other companies that are linking into us. That's what PR can do. So all the other 90% of that list, you're going to send them an email using whatever email software provider you use. You're just going to put the press release in. It doesn't have to really look good. Make sure that it's clickable a couple times, and you're going to send that out. You can just keep resending that to people over time. You will get lots of reporters that are like, I don't write about this. When you get that kind of an email, don't get discouraged. You're trying to be valuable for them. You will get vitriol in some of your messages when you send out bulk emails. That's just the way the world is. I can't even say the words that people say to me when I email in bulk. But then right after that, the next one, like, this is amazing, Andrew, thank you so much. So focus on the positivity. And if you get a negative message, a lot of them are just PLZ, unsubscribe. Totally fine, right? We'll unsubscribe you. But instead, oh, I'm so sorry, John. I always use the fake name John or whatever, but hey, I'm so sorry, John. I was just trying to send you a valuable story. Could you remind me what you do write about so I can send you more valuable content later? If you're not going to be a PR person for other businesses, you might never respond to them, but that'll at least cool them off and make sure there's no brand damage there for you. So if they respond back, well, I'm interested in writing about blah, 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 blah. If you can figure out a way for you or someone on your team to be valuable for that, you might have another in there. So marketers never waste an opportunity. That's what my girlfriend says. So that's the same thing. If you don't want to just go and use your normal email software provider, if you want to get really growth hackery, you can use a Gmail. You can make up a new domain that looks similar to your company's, and you can warm up that email address. And we can talk about that in the question section. But you can basically use this tool, which is reply.io. And I am an ambassador for that company. I'm not recommending because of that. It's amazing. I didn't show it in here, but they actually have if you're not a cold email marketing expert like me, this tool really helps me because it literally has a green to red kind of like traffic light thing going for the email content. It will tell you if you're using spam words. It will tell you if the email is too long. It will tell you if you've included too many questions and things like that. But bottom line is, don't care what tool you use a drip campaign tool to send out. This is an actual one for a startup client in my coaching program. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 emails in a series to the reporters about the press release, right? So over the course of 11 days, they're going to get these 5 or 6 emails. Sure, lots of people are going to unsubscribe. That's totally fine. We're still going to email. I'm a marketing agency. I'm going to email them with the next project or thing that we work on, but you'll get, dozens of responses from doing this over time. And you kind of just forget about PR. Once you've already got the big opportunities, this is just going to keep getting you links, keep getting you potential interviews. You can pause this campaign anytime you want. Okay, we've done enough podcasts now as a business. We've got a lot of links coming in. Our founder's really busy. Let's pause the PR campaign and wait for the next major milestone of the company. We partner, we get acquired, we get invested in, we move offices, whatever it is. You can continuously redo this over and over again. Okay, let me check on time, guys. All right, 8 more minutes, then we'll have 10 minutes for questions, okay? So speaking to the media, I'm probably gonna get it done faster than 8 minutes. Speaking to the media is not like speaking to me on the phone. Speaking to the media is very serious, because if you say the wrong thing, you might get represented in a way that you don't appreciate that could be brand damaging. If you have investors and VCs, you need to be really careful for how you talk about your brand and your business. So what I recommend you do is literally practice in front of the mirror. You would be surprised if you're under 30 and you're listening to this, you say, yeah, and like way too much. I'm not to be ageist. It doesn't matter. I say a lot of curse words, way too much. You have to summon that out of you. Demons be gone. And when you speak to the media, so be really professional. Don't say anything that you wouldn't want the whole world to know about. These are some tips after dozens of executive media training things that I've done. Before we get into the tips, what we do when we do executive media training, which you can just rip off and copy for yourself, is practice questions. What is this reporter going to ask? What are they interested in? What are the most important things that I want to talk about? So 2 things I want you to practice. Talking points, the things that you must say about the company, right? Every interview that we do, we want to make sure we talk about the main features of our product, the main unique selling points, the main traction and interesting things, why it's relevant or whatever. 3 or 4 things that every single time we get interviewed, we have to say. Then the other thing I want you to practice is the 3 or 4 questions they're going to ask every time. You want to get those down really perfectly. What is the origin story? What's your background? If you're me, they're always asking about digital nomad and travel and stuff. So you want to get that down, and I'll talk about it in the questions and everything. But you want to come off as an expert. You want to come off as an expert. You want to not say, or I don't know. About I don't know, there's a way better way to say that. If you ever listen to any of my podcasts, you'll now be able to listen and know when I didn't know the answer to something. So I'm giving away my secret, but I don't ever say, I don't know. I go, that is an amazing question. Let me think. I think I'll need to check with my team and probably get a more definitive answer. I don't want to say the wrong thing, so I'm not exactly sure right now, but that's a really good question. See how it's a little bit different? I technically said I don't know, but you don't want to say you don't know. So rework that, kind of a workaround for that is just complimenting the reporter, saying it's a really good question, and you'd like to get the concrete figures and follow up with them on email or something like that. If it's a podcast, do exactly like I just said. When you're being interviewed, talk slowly, because most of the time they just want to talk to you on the phone. They're not recording it, so they have to take notes. And if they take the wrong notes, you're going to be upset with the way you're represented in the media. And the last thing is, I didn't say short answers. You don't need to repeat yourself. I'm a super long-winded dude. If you can't tell after an hour of me talking by myself, you got to be short and succinct, because like I said, they're taking notes. They don't need the whole long story. You're going to send them, they've got the press release. They will do a follow-up call with you if they need new stuff. So short answers, don't repeat yourself, short to the point of 30 seconds to 60 seconds max per answer. And then the last thing is, don't say anything that you don't want to be published. There is no such thing as off the record, really. They don't care about you, and you need to be really careful about what you say. So don't be like, okay, well, this is off the record. They're just taking notes. They're going to forget what you said was off the record, and they're just going to go hard on publishing it, right? So pulling all of this together, and we've got 14 questions. So excited. I'm going to jump in right now. We got 15 minutes to do it. Basically, we need you to leverage what story you have. Okay. That could be your database, your incredible team. You've assembled this team from a million different famous companies. That's a news story. This is a super team, the A team that's going to solve this huge problem, the huge problem that you're solving, the new revolutionary product that you're putting out, the money that you've raised. Recycle your PR into other things. You spent so much time writing that press release. You might be able to repurpose that press release into social media materials, social media posts, content for YouTube videos. Who knows? Repurpose it, because that way you get more return on your time investment. Remember what I said, ROTI? Plan your PR activities in advance so you're not freaking out. Like I said, I think you want to start building your press list immediately. Forever, for the life of your career in business, you should be building a press list, right? I am. You should. You can reuse it. And for the press release, 30 days before your launch, you can really get it done in 2 weeks too, but you want to start reaching out to the media 30 days before you really want to be published, because they might need that kind of lag time. So be aggressive, really be confident that you're out here just trying to help people. And then you can be aggressive and you're not, trying to take advantage. And then, like I said, build that stuff over time. Okay, that's the end. We're going to move into questions right now. But basically, if you want to drop off and you don't care about questions, you can find me at Andrew Startups. My book is startupgrowthbook.com. We just went through less than 1 chapter of the whole book. There's 10 chapters in there. You'll really learn a lot about how I've done growth hacking for businesses for a long, long time. And okay.
Awesome. And for everyone who wants to see more of Andrew and get more of those awesome tips, we have him back here next week, Wednesday at exactly the same time. I shared the sign up link a little further up in the chat, but I can do it again. And next week will be all about SEO and how to do it from scratch and for free. I'm super excited about that, Andrew. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
your time, and thank you everyone for joining. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Bye.